Free audio post-production by Alphonic.com.
Welcome back to the 10-7 podcast. Today, we are pulling back the curtain on EMS administration. We've got Director Adam Lewis with us, and we're going to talk about what it's like to oversee 99 employees, handling an ever-evolving agency and the process of making tough decisions on a daily basis. How you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm hanging in there.
Thanks for having me.
I guess the easiest place to start is where did you start how did you start your career in local government?
Well, I got a call from our county mayor one day. He had a position open in his office as an assistant, more of a chief of staff role, if you will, and I jumped on it. Kind of a dream job for me, something I knew I would be good at and enjoy. And so that was my first foray into government work. I'd been involved in politics. I've been involved in political campaigns, but never actually worked for an elected official or for government. And so this was my first opportunity to do that.
So your prior experience in politics is kind of how you got to know Mayor Davis.
Yeah, that's how I made that connection. Previously I worked in the private sector, in project management for various companies. So I didn't have any previous government experience, but a lot of what I did for the mayor and do for the mayor still, and of course here at EMS, a lot of those skills translated from the private sector very well.
Yeah, how did your prior experience prepare you for this role?
Well, primarily, I would say from a financial standpoint, I have managed $1 million budgets, multi-million-dollar budgets before. I don't have an accounting degree or accounting background, but I know enough to be dangerous because of those roles that I've had, where I've been the primary decision maker for a business or for a department or for an office. And so financially, I came into this role with a lot of prior experience and also just general leadership experience in managing people. I've had the opportunity to lead large teams. We're over 100 here at Bradley County EMS. I've had opportunities to manage upwards of 150 and as few as 5 or 6 in my career.
Most people who get into EMS don't really strive for a director type role, and you started right at the top with no EMS experience. What went through your head when Mayor Davis asked you to do this?
Well, to be honest, when he first told me to come over here, I asked him if he was trying to get rid of me because, up until that point, EMS is a department that reports up to the mayor's office. And so I had worked with previous directors. I knew sort of the big challenges, the big rocks, if you will, about what EMS does and dealt with. But obviously I don't have a medical background whatsoever, and didn't have a really keen understanding of everything that goes into the day-to-day at EMS. So I knew, number one, I was walking into a situation where I had a serious learning curve in a lot of ways, but I also was just concerned that he was trying to get rid of me because, frankly, in the past, this is not a reflection of my predecessors, but I watched my predecessors in the director's role really, really struggle and become frustrated and stressed. And I recognized that position as a difficult job. And so I don't think I was prepared or wanted to really engage in that. And I thought he's sending me off to out to pasture, if you will. But it turned out to be anything but that.
What were some of the challenges that you knew you were going to be walking into?
Well, one of the things that I did before my first day, before April 1st of that year, I met with each of the commanders to talk about the challenges that they saw, the needs that they saw, what they wanted to see in the next director. At that point, those conversations I was having weren't about me because I didn't know that it was going to be me. I don't think the mayor knew that it was going to be me, but sort of went on a fact-finding mission, if you will, to help identify and and help him select the next director. So I didn't necessarily think I was doing homework that I would personally be using. I was trying to get a better understanding so that he and I could guide the selection process for who would be taking over. But those conversations ended up being very helpful because a lot of what I heard, I had heard before. Morale issues, consistency issues, equipment needs, truck needs, things like that. There were some smaller things that I also learned and heard about from the commanders, but generally speaking, the big issues that I knew that they were facing were issues that I already was aware of, and so it was helpful. I learned things that I didn't know, a lot of things that I didn't know, but it was also affirming that the biggest issues, the issues that I felt had to be addressed and had to be changed and to affect real change, I was already aware of, and I kind of already knew what I was coming into.
Yeah.
The largest one would have been just the poor morale that seemed to be pretty prevalent across all stations, license levels, command staff, frontline staff, you name it.
And that's tough. That's an overlooming kind of dark cloud that kind of plagues all services, all agencies. That's kind of like pulling weeds. You're never really going to stop fighting it. When you're not fighting low morale in any of your
well,
jobs.
And that's true. I mean, if and I said this day one, I said this to the command staff, and I said this to everyone. There are a lot of issues that we need to address. There are budget concerns. There's equipment concerns. We want to do more, have more. Issues of pay, all of those things exist, but none of it matters if the morale sucks.
Mm-hmm.
If everyone's miserable walking in the door, we've got to fix that. And so whether I've been director of EMS or anywhere I've worked, I firmly believe that the morale and the culture of your organization determines everything else.
Yeah.
Right. And if you have poor morale and you have, a poor culture, it doesn't matter how good your protocols are. It doesn't matter how much you're getting paid. It doesn't matter what cool new toys you've got to play with. The job still sucks. Yep. And it's still hard and it's still too much. So my first primary goal was to address the culture and the morale. And you're right. Those are ongoing issues. It's not something you just fix once. It's something that has to be addressed over and over and over again. One of the things that I kind of chuckle about, and this comes from, again, my experience outside of EMS, I hear this a lot. Well, that's just EMS, that's just the way EMS is. And they're saying it negatively, right?
Yeah.
And blaming EMS. And what I'm quick to say is, no, that's not just EMS. What you're complaining about, is an issue that I've seen elsewhere in other fields and other industries, not because it's just a quote EMS problem. It's a people problem, right? It's a human problem. And as long as you've got any organization built with imperfect humans, you're going to continue to have issues. And from the perspective of a leader, right, I've had to look at command staff who get frustrated that they're having to repeat and address the same things over and over, right? That is frustrating. It would be for anyone, but I'm quick to say that's why your job exists.
It's kind of the job.
If there was no need to manage people, then there would not be a need for managers, right? And so the problems and the challenges, I think, exist anywhere that you're dealing with people, and they show up differently, they look differently, but they are all still rooted in the same reason, which is that, like you said, we're all humans and no one's perfect.
Yeah, we can't really get rid of that factor. What are some of the mistakes that previous administrations had made that kind of gave you some insight coming into this role?
Well, I don't want to call them out as mistakes. I'll go off of, things that were tried or things that were done. Some of them weren't things that didn't work. Mm-hmm. Maybe they did work. I'll give you an example. Everyone has an opinion when it comes to the type of ambulance that they want to drive in this business, right? Oh, I like internationals, or I like this, or I like that. I like sitting up high. I like sitting down low. I like the way this drives, and that's okay. We're all allowed to have an opinion. I have an opinion.
I know the committee likes vans.
Yes. Yeah. The EMS committee would prefer that we buy vans, right? They're a lot cheaper. But, the practical reality sometimes should play a part in how we decide what type of truck we're gonna buy. I happen to think, my favorite type of ambulance is the traditional international. I like it. From the outside, the way it looks like an ambulance. When you picture an ambulance, a classic ambulance in your mind, it's the International, right? It may not be a Ford that's built on a van chassis or a truck chassis. They sit up high. You feel like you own the road. They've got the big old air horns.
It's got a professional look to it.
Yes. However, the fact is they are 3 times as costly to maintain. If the handle on the door breaks on an International versus the handle on a Ford or another type of vehicle, it's 3 times as costly.
Jeez.
Now, there's all arguments to be made for gas versus diesel, but it did not take me long to realize, as much as the International ambulance design is probably preferred from a financial and practical operational standpoint, it was costing us a lot more to be able to have that. So is that I like to drive high instead of lower to the ground, is that worth several $100,000 a year in additional expenses? And I think when you're working with taxpayer dollars, the answer is easy. No. So I think, that's not necessarily, I wouldn't call that a mistake, right? But I think that's things that previous administrations or directors made the decision to go a certain direction. And then over time, you see how those decisions kind of play out. So I'm not criticizing that decision. I'm just looking at it from a different lens.
Yeah.
And so whether it's the ambulance choice, to smaller issues, when it comes to budgeting and how raises are given out and whether or not starting salaries are increased. There were things that especially as I got in and really kind of got to get my feet wet, that I realized, okay, there's a different way we can do this to have a more positive outcome, whether it be for the employee, whether it be for patient care. And so I think, there've been countless decisions over the last almost now 2 years that I've been here, where we've been able to sort of look through that lens and just try to get a little bit better. That's been my goal from day one, personally, and for the organization, is to just get 1% better today, right?
Yeah.
If I can come in today and what can I do today to be just a little bit better than I was yesterday, right? I'm not trying to conquer the world. I'm not trying to change everything from the ground up. But if I can come in every day for a year and get just a little bit better, I'm going to look back on the end of that year and see a lot of improvement, right? That momentum picks up. And so that's been my goal and how I've tried to lead and encourage and also make decisions.
Yeah, you've kind of struck me as somebody who's good at looking at the big picture. Getting caught up in the little details can be absolutely exhausting, but those little details really do add up to formulate what the big picture is.
Absolutely.
So for those of you that missed the EMS committee meeting, what changes have you made to the budget and what changes or growth do you project for the future?
So I have not completed our upcoming budget request, so I don't have specifics, but I can tell you the direction that I'm hoping that we're able to go. And all of this is just a request, right? We, as department heads at the county level, we present budget requests to the mayor and to the finance committee and the county commission, and then they do their thing, right? Where I've got one department that I'm focused on, they've got 30, right? So they've got to see the big picture from a budget standpoint. But it has been very evident to me that there is a side of what we do that can be and is very profitable, right? A lot of ambulance services, or people may not realize this, but most ambulance services, especially that are county owned and operated, only run 911 calls, right? Hamilton County near us, much bigger population wise. Much bigger in terms of their EMS organization and personnel and trucks on the road, but they only respond to 911 calls. At Bradley County, we run 911 calls as well as what are called convalescent calls. If you think about, someone going from the nursing home to a doctor's appointment, or from the hospital back to being discharged back to their home, or to a rehab facility, or to a nursing home, right? There's a pretty significant portion of our call volume that represents those types of calls, right? They're not emergencies. They're not life-threatening, but they're still necessary, right? And so what we have found, what I've found, the more of those calls we take, the more revenue that we bring in, right? The more income. those types of calls are almost always guaranteed to be paid by insurance. And so, on a 911 side, it's not really fair to look at responding to emergencies as a revenue source. And so we don't, but there is a side of what we do that very much is a revenue source. There are private ambulance services that's all they do is run these types of calls, right? Where Hamilton County EMS does not run them. There are 2 or 3 or 4 different private ambulance services that only run these convalescent calls, and they make a fortune, right? Why shouldn't we? We're already running those calls. We're not able to run all of them because of our resources. So oftentimes we're giving them away to who? Other private services outside the county, right? But for every one of those calls that we take, that's an additional source of revenue. And for the way we're funded, which is through tax dollars from Bradley County citizens, every dollar that we bring in is one less tax dollar that we need from the taxpayers. So the more money we make, the less money taxpayers have to pay for the same world-class service that we're already offering today. I think that's a plus as a taxpayer. I think that puts us in the driver's seat when it comes to things like needing new equipment, upgrading our trucks, raising salaries, right? We have the ability to solve a lot of our own problems that are financial in nature by simply going out and earning more revenue to cover those costs and cover those needs. And so right now we make every effort to run 2 ambulances that take those types of calls only. It's good for the revenue reasons that I mentioned, but it's also good because it allows those 911 trucks to focus solely on 911 calls, right? Yeah. Our resources there aren't stretched thin taking both types of calls. They're able to focus on the life-threatening emergencies. These vans and this side of what we're doing is able to focus on the calls that are scheduled, semi-predictable, guaranteed revenue. And the more of those vans, one of the things, back to your original question, be asking for 2 additional vans as well as full-time employee positions to staff those vans.
So we're asking for 2?
2.
All right.
Yes.
Okay.
I think with the what we know is coming in the next year appears to be 2 additional standalone ERs with Park Ridge having been approved, and Bradley Medical Center has already announced their intention to build one. By this time next year, you're talking about a full operating hospital. You're talking about the existing ER, and I already said we're not able resource-wise to take the volume just there. We know the increased volume is going to come when there's 2 more standalone ERs that are opened up. You have a large skilled healthcare facility in Compass that's going to be built in the next 18 months and added to the community. On top of the existing facilities we have, Siskin Hospital will be on the West Side Drive, which is another healthcare facility. All of these are going to mean an increase in those non-emergency transfers, those convalescent calls that we've been talking about. So that's the reason for the ask. 2 more trucks with 2 people each, 2 crews to staff those, which in turn brings in more money and frees up our 911 trucks to just focus on 911 calls.
That sounds like a ton more IFTs. So this year we asked for 2. Next year we may be looking at asking for another 2.
I think that'll be decided based on where the volume is, right?
Sure.
We know that with 2 right now, we're not able to take everything. We add 2 more. Are we still not able to take everything? Then maybe we need to add a 5th one, right? At some point, saturation becomes a problem. You know, 6, 8 of those, they're sitting around doing nothing, right? So I don't know where that sweet spot is. I think we have to grow towards that.
Yeah, we haven't hit it yet.
But I know that adding 2 more is not going to be too much, right? I think we'll find that 4, especially this time next year, is the very least that we're going to need to be able to maintain that call volume. On a ambulance 911 ALS side, we just recently brought in a new truck that will be in service soon. Mm-hmm. We have a truck that's been ordered that will be here sometime in October. Mm-hmm. And then we also have a truck that's being donated, very lightly used truck from the Cleveland City School System. That's an amazing vehicle that they purchased during COVID with a COVID grant that they're donating to us. And so we'll have had within a 12-month period 3 new ALS ambulances added to our rotation as well. Also, I think the other big ask in this year's budget will be addressing pay. My hope is to present a plan that does two things. One, raises the starting pays across the board, right? At the basic, the advanced, and the paramedic level, as well as implement step raises that reward longevity and seniority. There's a lot of variables. There's a lot of different things. I'm looking at the final dollar amount, right? If we raise starting pay to X and we offer a 2% step raise, it's going to cost us $800,000, right?
Yeah.
Hypothetically. So I'm looking at the bigger picture of what's that bottom dollar going to cost and trying to find the sweet spot to go to the mayor and the commission with and ask. The nice thing, again, as I mentioned earlier, yes, we're asking for pay, but we're also bringing solutions to the table. We are on track to make about $1 million more this year than we were projected. So if we were to come in and ask for $700,000 or $800,000 in increased salaries, the leverage that we have, the argument or the justification is we've also brought in an extra $1 million, right? So if all we need is 700,000, the county still gets an extra 300,000 that they didn't have before. So I'm hopeful that with the track record of our revenue, the savings, the way we've run well budget wise the last 2 or 3 years, and with what's possible and demonstrated by the call volume data and the potential revenue that we're able to get some of these things done this year.
There's a reason why flight services take transfers. They're not able to pay for big, expensive aircraft without doing IFTs. And honestly, I tell new basic EMTs all the time, I'm like, you may be starting off on a Code 80 truck, but guess what? If you decide to go all the way and get your vent certification or your critical care or your FPC, whatever, guess what? You're doing transfers. That's your career begins and ends with transfers. That's the name of the business because that's where the money's at. Are there any decisions that you've made that thought later, man, I shouldn't have done that?
Nothing. No specific decision stands out. One of the things that I have been surprised by and constantly have to catch myself is pushing and advocating for change, right? In an organization like EMS that's driven by process and procedure and protocols and, very defined, scientifically proven, methods of operating, change can be a little scary. The wrong change could mean someone's life. So what I've found, and this is one of the things that I would say is different from what I've experienced in the past, because I've never been anywhere that people just love change, right? Even people that say they want change, as long as you change something they want to change, they're happy. But if you change something they don't want to change, they're not, right? So I think as humans, again, we don't necessarily seek out change. But if our goal is to get a little bit better every day, then that means at some point we are going to need to change, or at least look at changing something that you may or I may not agree with. We made a lot of changes, what I call low-hanging fruit, easy changes. The first year I was here, had money to be able to do some of the things that had been sitting on the shelf, projects, pieces of equipment, things like that, that weren't able to be done before. And so those were all fun. People had been asking, been begging, been wanting. And so we were able to sort of tackle a lot of that low hanging fruit. But this last year, and I said it at our spring in-service, we've reached the point now where if we're going to continue to get better and continue to push ourselves and continue to evaluate what we're doing and how we're doing it, we've reached the point where the easy, fun stuff is over. Now we are going to probably on a more regular basis come in contact with discussions and changes that make all of us uncomfortable, myself included. And I think, right, I'm not for change just for the sake of change, right? But I think when we're discussing change in an organization, it should, on some level, be something that at some point makes everybody uncomfortable. Because if everybody's always comfortable or one group is always comfortable, that probably is a good indication that we're not pushing or doing anything to get better and to change. Excellence isn't found in stagnation, right? You can't start the momentum towards a better morale and a better culture and better equipment and better funding and then just stop. You have to continue that momentum. And so, do I regret some of the decisions I've made? Not necessarily. Do I regret maybe how many decisions and how quickly? Yes, because as much as I believe we've got to continue to push and continue to move the ball forward and not just fall back to, well, this is how we've always done it. There is something to be said about change fatigue, right? And back to one of my earlier points that morale is everything, and change fatigue can affect morale. And so in the last 6 or 8 months, I've begun to recognize that. I've tried to dial it back. I've tried to say, okay, we're not going to make, big changes. We're not going to, this project that we've just been discussing or this particular change, we're going to hold or pause or table, right? Again, not with the intention of just stopping and not looking for ways to get better, but to just allow the organization, me, us, the command staff, our frontline employees to just take a breath and catch up. There's been a lot of change, and I believe most of it's been good. I think most of it's been positive. I've always said, if we make this change, whether it's my decision or a group decision, myself and the command staff, if we make this change and 3 months down the road, it's a total disaster, we'll just go back to the way we were doing it, right? We're not doing anything that can't be undone, right? And to my knowledge, I don't think we've had to do that. So I think that's evidence that the decisions and the changes that have been made have been better for the organization. They may not have been liked or understood at the time, but big picture, long term, it has made us better. And it's just that hiccup of sometimes getting over and getting past what we've always done it this way. And so, but I wouldn't say that I regret it, but I definitely have learned there's a pace that these things need to be done in an organization like this. Every organization is different, but as I said at the beginning of answering this question, when we're driven by protocols and, specific guidelines, you start changing things that people are used to, black and white, clearly defined. It can rock some people.
Yeah. Well, growing hurts.
It does. Yeah.
That's kind of a part of it, though.
Yeah.
I mean, stuff's going to change around us, and we can either get on board or keep doing things the way we've been doing and stay stagnant. There's no growth in that.
I agree.
What are some of the tech changes that you've wanted to implement for future here?
Tech changes?
Yeah.
I mean, I think when and where we can, we should be utilizing, the best tools and equipment that technology has to offer. There are devices out there that we don't have. There are devices out there that we could have on trucks that most services don't have. Mm-hmm. Largely because they're costly. A lot of times it's because there's learning and training that would be associated with it too. And so, things that I'm thinking of that I would love to see a part of Bradley County EMS, I hope that one day we're able to have blood in the field. I hope that we're able to graduate from something like the basic glucometer to something that gives us maybe a better, quicker, accurate reading, as well as other information and other data, something like the iStat or something similar. Right? There are a number of pieces of equipment out there that we don't really have. Got to take someone to the hospital to really get a lot of any imaging done. We tell people in the field, I can't tell what's going on inside. I think this might be, or I think that might be, but I really can't tell. And the only way we can know for sure is if we get you to a hospital. There are devices out there that would give us somewhat of a clearer picture in the field. Whether it's to get a line on somebody, make it easier for somebody that's a hard stick that can't see or feel their veins, and we've tried.
Sounds like you're talking about a butterfly
ultrasounds, right? I mean, not just for that purpose, right? But even for looking at other parts of the body, right? Mm. They're extremely expensive, but they're incredibly effective when used properly by people who know what to do with them. And so I think I look at technology from that standpoint. I think that one thing, and I hesitate to bring this up because it can be controversial, but I don't think that as a society we cannot ignore artificial intelligence. It's not going anywhere. If you want it to, that ship has sailed, right? I'm not suggesting that I'm advocating for the use of AI in pre-hospital care and in an EMS setting. But what I am saying is that I think it's coming, whether I want it or you want it or anybody else wants it or not. It's coming to every aspect of society. So again, I think rather than fight it, rather than be resistant, I think we need to be wary of it. We tried with our PCR software in the last year that had the feature where you could, with the press of a button, AI would quote write your narrative for you, right? And we found that it did some things well, but it still didn't do a lot of things well. Mm-hmm. And so we turned that feature off. I think that that's something that, again, as artificial intelligence does, it continues to learn and grow and do better. In a year, that feature might be more successful, and it's something that we try to turn back on. But whether it's using AI in that manner, I'm not one of those that thinks that paramedics are going to be replaced by artificial intelligence robots. Maybe one day. That's not what I'm suggesting. I just think that whether it's PCR software or research or you name it, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities to integrate AI into what we do that will improve patient care and efficiency and consistency. And I hope when that time comes that we vet those resources, but that we don't just shun them because we don't like the idea of AI, right? So
I'd really like to see some form of AI utilization and inventory management.
Absolutely.
I think there's got to be something out there that can help agencies with that, because right now the way we're doing it, it's not terrible, mm-hmm. but I know that there's a more efficient mm-hmm. way of doing it.
Well, I mean, there's already evidence of it when it comes to training, mm-hmm. right? Both in the school setting and in the continuing education setting, right? The AI does not need to be the enemy, right? I use AI every day in my roles, both here at EMS and at the county. But I use it to make my job easier and to create efficiency and to improve what I'm doing, not to replace it. Right. I'm still a human being. I still have things that only a human being can do, but there are things that whether it be ChatGPT or other resources that are out there that give me more time back to focus on the things that only a human can do. And so I'll continue to use it that way.
Everybody uses it. You can't not use it. It's integrated everywhere. So we're just going to have to get used to it.
Absolutely.
What do you think is the one piece of equipment or software that's been a total game changer for us? I know Field Ops.
Yeah. That's my go-to. Now that's only for command staff, right? Our crews don't have that, but we're talking about Field Ops, which is essentially direct access to the CAD, to the dispatch records for every call that we respond to, right in the palm of your hand on your phone. We are getting ready to implement MDTs, mobile data tablets, that are in each of the trucks, which are simply large tablets with the same type of software on it, so that our crews in the trucks will be able to see the call data, the patient information, the narrative, the address, the caller name. I mean, the information that right now, a lot of it we don't get because it's not shared over the radio, because it can't be, but also it's time consuming to get that information over the radio. When a dispatcher says emergency chest pain call and gives the address, every call is followed then by a narrative, and especially in the calls that are high acuity, that are very serious, seconds and minutes matter. And so what these tools will allow our crews to do is to, right there as they're en route, read what's taking place, what's happening on the 911 call at dispatch, right? Because that call taker is inputting everything into the computer system in real time. We'll be able to see that, all without wasting valuable time relaying that back and forth, asking questions over the radio. And so for command staff, I know it's been a game changer, and I'm anxious to see it roll out to everyone, because not only will it give us that access to valuable data, it will also allow the dispatch center to see in real time GPS locations on our trucks, which is critical, because that will also allow us, for a handful of our calls, not all of them, but for the more serious, high acuity calls, we will be able to shift to a model that dispatches automatically the closest available truck. So if someone's in cardiac arrest and receiving CPR, now, because they can't see, or the system can't see where our trucks are, it's just the next truck up, right? Which is okay, but that truck might be 6 minutes away. Meanwhile, there's another truck driving down the street, going back to their station, going right past the house, that should absolutely stop, but won't necessarily know that they need to, right? With this system, both sides of the coin will be able to see that. And so we'll be able to send that truck that's right there to a CPR, saving valuable time, valuable seconds, and likely saving a better chance of saving someone's life than sending just the truck that's next up that might be further away. So again, not for every call, but for a handful of our more serious calls that we encounter, this system will allow us to be able to do that. And I think that's a game changer for patient care, for us as a service, and for the community.
Yeah, and that's, we kind of already have I don't know if since the policy's been changed, I don't know if it's a part of policy or not, but policy used to be, if a bad call comes out and you're closest to it, you jump the call.
Right.
And right now, I feel like a lot of people already kind of do that.
And that's the thing. Yeah, that truck that's driving by, they hear it on the radio, right? And they say, hey, you know what? We're right across the street. We'll go. So it's already effectively happening most of the time anyway.
Right.
We're just making it a more seamless process to where that truck gets automatically dispatched right away.
There's a lot of efficiency lost in
Right.
verbal communication
That's
on
right.
the radio. It's just not, it's a good way of communicating, but we've got better ways of doing
That's
it
right.
now. We have the ability to look at a paragraph of whatever this call is and be able to target what information is actually relevant. And I'm honestly, that in itself is a morale improving for me.
Well, and two, I think it helps, as providers, the dispatchers are trained, right? But they're not medical providers. So even though they've got a set series of questions that they're asking that gives us relevant data, a lot of times they're not able to interpret the answer, right? But as a provider, whether you're in the command staff or on that truck, as you read this narrative and you see the answers, many times you're able to determine, okay, this call is really more serious than it came in as, or that it was dispatched as, which then allows you to, if you weren't running lights and sirens maybe before, now we're hustling to get there. Or at least when you're walking in the door, what you're walking into, better than taking the time to walk in, ask all of those questions. So it for so many reasons, it really is a game changer for us. It has been.
Where do you think we fall short as a department in adapting to change and improvement?
One of the things that we could do better in that area, and myself included, is to just stop and take a breath sometimes, right? Many times the knee-jerk reaction to things is negative, right? But after people have calmed down or slept on it or seen it in action, they realize it's not the end of the world, right? And so I think that's one thing that we could do better, is to just, understand and buy into the idea that we're always going to be continuing to look at how can we get better. And that, by its very definition, if that's what we're committing to, then we're also committing to regular and consistent change, not for the sake of just change, but again, for the sake of getting better, right? Oh. And so I think if first of all, if we can buy into that, then I think the next step is to accept the fact that it's not always going to feel great. I've made decisions and announced changes that I don't feel comfortable with, but I believe, based on the data or based on the discussion or the research, that it's going to be good in the long run. But it's uncomfortable to think about doing it, And so I think all of us, myself included, could do better by just accepting that change is inevitable and choosing better ways to control our initial reaction. I say this a lot: control what you can control. right? We're all in different roles. There's things that even as the director that I can't control when it comes to EMS. If I'm a basic EMT on an ambulance, there's a whole lot less that I can control, right? And so I think a lot of times we get worked up, and this is human nature again too. We get worked up and worried about things we have no control over that aren't our responsibility. And I think we would all do ourselves a lot of favors if we just accepted there are things I can't control. I'm going to focus on what I can, and whatever I can't, I'm going to take a breath and support and do the best I can. But I also think at this point too, what I think we should look at, and what I have to tell myself is, let's look at our track record, right? It's one thing if you don't trust leadership, and it's one thing if leadership has given you reason not to trust them. But I hope that I've led personally in such a way, and that our command staff has led in such a way, that we can look back, or anyone can look back and judge the results and the track record of what we've done in the recent past, right? You may not have liked a decision that was made, but in hindsight, you have to admit that, yes, it did improve X, Y, or Z, right? And I think over and over, whether it's, oh, it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be, or no, it really did change, or fill in the blank, right? I think we can demonstrate, I believe that we can demonstrate as a leadership team that we've got a good track record. That are we perfect? No. Am I going to disappoint people as the director? I'm sure I have, right? It's not my intention, but I don't think anyone's doing anything maliciously. I believe we all want what's best for the service and each other. And we might have different opinions on what that looks like and how we go about it. But as long as everyone's willing to work together for the ultimate good, then I think, like I said, there's nothing that can't be undone. But we've got a track record. I want to believe that we have a track record that I hope people will begin to look back at. And when an announcement is made or a change is made, there's not a knee-jerk reaction. There's more of a sigh and a willingness to accept that, okay, I trust the decisions that are being made, because look at what's happened so far, right? I may not understand it. I may not really like it, but I'm going to not react and respond because I trust the decision process based on the track record that exists.
Yeah. People need to learn how to be wrong. People need to learn how to control their emotions, and having a reaction and looking at things objectively kind of makes everything run a little bit smoother.
Yeah. I want I want feedback. I say often, if you got questions or concerns, I want to hear them. I try to have an open door policy. I'm not afraid. I want people to follow their chain of command, right? Because I think that wherever you fall in the chain of command, you owe that to the ones above you,
right.
Even myself, right? I don't think it would be right of me to skip the mayor and go to a county commissioner on an issue if it's not something that I've addressed with him, right? So I don't mind if people come to me, but many times, especially if it's a concern or a complaint about someone else or something else, one of my first questions is, well, have you talked to that person? And almost always the answer is no. And it ends up being a short conversation, because I say, that's your first step. You need to go talk to them, right? It's one thing if you've talked to your commander and either not gotten an answer you like, or not gotten the right answer, or maybe the commander has said or done something that was wrong, right? And then you come to me. That's different than just jumping over somebody. If I were that lieutenant or that commander, I wouldn't appreciate that. So I know that they don't, right? And so that's why I encourage people, follow your chain of command, but I want people to feel like they can express concerns to me, that I'm going to listen. I'm not always going to be able to give them an answer they like, but I'm at least going to give them an answer. And even if I don't have one, I'm committed to going and getting one and following up with them. And I think that's the least I can do, as the director. And really, I think that's the least any leader at any level should be willing to do.
Yeah. There's a difference between having a conversation about changes and kind of working through the process just in discussion,
right?
And then blowing off the chain of command and coming to you with problems. It's
absolutely.
Like, we've got a structure here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, is there anything else that you wanted to discuss today?
I don't think so. This has been fun. I don't get to talk about this stuff a lot, but I have found too in this role that leadership is something that I really care about. I think it's important. I care about communication. I care about good communication. Again, I'm not perfect. I don't do it right all the time myself, but I strive to, and I try to. And good communication is hard to do on a
Yeah.
consistent basis.
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of hard conversations. It's not always fun, but I believe, and I've seen it in my own experience as a leader and even as someone who answers to leaders, that good communication is worth the effort. I probably, sometimes I think I might explain or communicate too much. Sometimes that gets me in trouble too. But I'll be honest. I mean, there's the other criticism, and I'm my worst critic, so I don't necessarily know that this is coming from anybody but my own head. But I know that there are a number of issues that I could certainly have been heavier handed about. Right? I'm not a good bad cop. That's not my leadership style. That's not my personality. I won't go so far as to say I have to be liked and loved by everybody. And this might be a trauma response because I worked for leaders like this that, rule with an iron fist, that micromanage, that constantly.
Politicians.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting I work for any of those right now. I'm just saying in the past, that's not the type of person I am. That's not my personality. I recognize that whether we're talking about, an SOG or holding someone accountable based on a policy, there are probably plenty of times that I could have been much more, strict, much more consistent in holding somebody accountable. I recognize that. But if I'm going to err on one side or the other, I would rather err on the side of not being hard enough than being the guy that nobody likes because he just talks down and is too hard and too harsh. And, and again, it's because I've worked for people like that I've learned more about leadership from those people based on how I don't want to be as a leader than I have from the many good leaders that I've worked with. And so, when I look at my own leadership, I recognize that there are times when I've been, my personality is to just assume the best in people, right? Whether it's a friendship, whether it's a familial relationship, or a work relationship. I just naturally, I'm probably too naive, too trusting. My philosophy, my thought process is, I don't have a problem with you unless you give me one, right? One of the things that I faced when I came over here was, the opinion. I was given a lot of opinions about a lot of people here. Right. And so I could have come in with a lot of preconceived ideas of who someone was and made that my opinion of them. Now, what I've always tried to do is form my opinion about a person based on my personal experience with that person. In some cases, I came in and I got to know people, and maybe what I'd been told or was the advice that was given to me was spot on. But in many cases, it wasn't, because I had a different personal experience than maybe that person did. Right. And so I think that's important as a leader too, is give everybody a chance. Right. Don't assume whether you're a new leader or you've grown up through the ranks in an organization, unless you've got personal experience to base your opinion or your perception of someone. Be very, very careful, because, I think if you just take someone else's word for it, you can make some assumptions that are damaging and that are unfair. And, I go back to I will admittedly say, and maybe even to a fault, that, I've not, cracked the whip hard enough when I should, or I give too many chances before I do something. And I'm probably the same way as a parent, but again, right or wrong, I would probably rather err on that side than be the other way.
Yeah, that's a hard line to draw.
It is. It is. At the end of the day, too, there's a big part of me that I assume, and you know what happens when you assume, right? But I assume that you know how to do your job, you know what's expected, and you're going to do it. Well, that's not everybody. Maybe they don't know what's expected. One of the things that we're focused really hard on right now is our new hire orientation and our onboarding process. I don't think we've done that very well for a long time, and that's not an indictment or a finger point to anyone. It is not. I think it's another example of, well, this is how we've always done it, right? But people change, personalities change, younger people, new people learn differently, behave differently, and I think we are about to really put a process in place that fills in a lot of the gaps. It's unfair to hold somebody accountable if we didn't give you the tools to be successful in the first place. I hear this, well, somebody so-and-so needs written up. Come to find out, so-and-so didn't even know what they were doing was wrong or know that they were supposed to do it this way, right? That's a failure on our part. So before we are consistently holding people accountable, which is something I hear a lot about, I've got to make sure and feel confident as the leader of an organization that that we are doing our part to set people up for success, willful disobedience or ignoring policy and procedure is one thing. Ignorance because you were never told, because we never showed you or taught you, is our problem. And so I think the first step, we've recently rolled out both new protocols and new SOGs. A lot of that was for the very reasons I'm talking about, is to reset the standard and reset the bar for everyone. You got to do that first, I think, before, and make sure that it's communicated and is available. And then you can start to hold people accountable. But we've got to do a better job when it comes to bringing new people in, whether it's you're a basic EMT fresh out of school or a seasoned paramedic, because even if you come from another service and you're a veteran provider, there's still things about how we do things at Bradley County EMS that we need to teach people, right? That we need to give them the tools to integrate successfully into our culture and the way we do things. And if we don't do that, I think we make it harder for ourselves as an organization, and certainly harder for those providers. And whatever we can do to be more efficient and get a little bit better every day is something that we should consider as often as we can.
Adam, thanks for your time. We appreciate all that you do for us every day, and we appreciate the transparency. We haven't really had many directors that promoted transparency before, and we appreciate it a lot.
Well, I appreciate you, and I feel blessed to be a part of this team every day. I get excited to come to work, and not a lot of people get to say that, and I'm thankful I'm one of them. So thanks for having me, and thanks for your support.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.